Hi, everybody. I am Matthew Miller. I am the Fedora project leader. And one of the things we've been doing, haven't done this summer, but we're starting it up again, is basically monthly presentations with various parts of the project, kind of to check in with the project parts and see how they're going in that different areas. We have this month, Petr Šabata, who's been working on something we call the Base Runtime, which is kind of an initiative to define the very core of the operating system and maybe have that move at different cycles to a different speed than the rest of the OS as part of our modularity initiative and kind of the ongoing consequences of this Fedora rings idea we've been talking about for several years. I will turn it over to Petr.
Okay, thank you for the great intro, Matthew. And now I will try to figure out how to share my screen.
Excellent. You have successfully vanished. So that's the beauty of doing live presentations without practice. We get this kind of situation. Would anybody like to tell some computer jokes so we do not have dead air?
Are we telling the jokes about computers or to the computers?
To the computers, I think.
11001 1. I promise you that's a really funny one.
Yeah, I'll decode it later.
All right, Petr looks like he's just turned back in. Twice.
Okay, I'm back.
Excellent.
It probably won't work. So I will just go through it.
Okay.
So yeah, I will be introducing the Base Runtime project, which is a spin-off of the Modularity Initiative. First, I would like to remind you what the Modularity and Factory 2, which is also related to Modularity, are about, although you probably all know. So modularity is about breaking the monolithic distribution compose into multiple smaller standalone pieces with disconnected lifecycles, support levels, features, and various other criteria. And Factory 2 is a set of changes to the development infrastructure that enables faster and more flexible build and release pipeline. And it is, among other things, how we deliver modularity.
So just insert, there was a really great blog post on the Fedora community blog about what Factory 2.0 is. So if people watching this don't have that background, go to communityblog.fedoraproject.org and can fill you in the background there. Sorry, carry on.
I should also know that there are separate teams that specialize in those topics. So both Modularity, Factory 2, and Base Runtime now. So what is Base Runtime anyway? It's a module stack, which means that it's composed of other modules. It should be composed, well, we are not entirely sure how we are going to put this together, but we expect it to be composed of like a kernel module, which includes the kernel itself and kernel headers and kernel modules and stuff like that, plus user space support, which is with a really stable API and ABI for all the applications that can build on top of that, such as glibc and libgcc. It's also the hardware enablement layer, which the Base Runtime module is meant just to light up the hardware to some extent. It's not going to provide like X11 drivers, for example, but it's going to provide drivers for pretty much everything else. And as I said, it's the minimal common application runtime. Lately, we've been playing with the idea of something called the generational core. The generational core is like the extended Base Runtime, and it bundles a lot of other tools and services that would be included in the platform core that the other applications can build on top of. It would be composed of the Base Runtime itself and other two huge modules we are thinking about. One would be called the System Runtime, which is all the utilities such for authentication, logging, network management, DNS lookups, whatever you can think of that is useful in a modern operating system, but still keeping it small. And the other would be shared components and libraries that would include libraries and tools for base runtime and system runtime.
So would traditional like Unix commands like sed and awk and those kind of things be basically part of that system module?
Yes, those would be part of the system runtime. The base runtime module would be just the kernel and glibc and stuff like that.
Systemd?
Well, that's a hard question, but I expect it to be in the system runtime. This is still something that we need to decide and make some design decisions.
Right. But mostly what we're talking about in the base runtime is lights on, the set of stuff that's necessary to get the system capable of running a process. Whether or not that includes running system processes in the background or not is kind of an open question right now.
The idea is that although the generational core would provide like the platform core or would define the Fedora release in this case, the base runtime part should be switchable whenever there's new hardware that you would like to support. So you would still keep the same ABI promise, but you would ship more new drivers and stuff like that.
Okay, so for example, in Fedora, I know famously a few years ago, Linus Torvalds complained that we don't release a new Anaconda to update to support new hardware. So if basically we could slip in the new hardware support underneath something that would be stable enough to have a new Anaconda release built on top of it. Is that the kind of idea?
That's absolutely correct, yes.
Yes, and one of the things that we're looking at too is we want to talk with the Anaconda folks in the relatively near future about whether it would be possible to redesign the network install approach such that we could swap in a base runtime in the standard net install as well. So just use the rest of the system and just swap in the base runtime so that the installer just keeps going with new hardware.
Yeah, so that's the basic idea. So I would also like to report on the current status of the project. We started only recently, 5 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. And we've been focused on a lot of research analysis and what kind of packages we could possibly include, and also working with Factory 2.0 to bootstrap the modularity and Factory 2 infrastructure. So far, we came up with today's 6,000 RPMs, used to be 5,600 until this afternoon, that are included in the base runtime prototype. And this is really the starting point we need to. Well, the idea is that we will split this into modules that would actually define the system runtime, shared components, base runtime, and additional build environment for those.
Did you say 6,000?
To make it less scary, what he is referring to is not the runtime, it is the complete self-hosting collection.
Okay.
It is the set of all packages necessary to build all packages necessary to build the runtime.
So not that it even matters at that magnitude, but are we talking source RPMs or binary RPMs?
We are talking binary RPMs. The source RPM, that list is roughly a half of that.
So it's like one T-Tech or Tech Live source RPM, and 4,000 of those are tech packages?
Yeah, unfortunately, you are correct because Tech Live is included in this list.
All right.
That being said, part of the purpose of this experiment is to track down what is causing the largest number of those things to be pulled in. What we suspect is that a great many of these things may only be pulled in by the %check section of an RPM spec file, and that many of these things may potentially be conditionalizable, so that we can choose to build them in general for the Fedora project, but maybe not build them for the base runtime module. Yes. So we're actively investigating that right now.
We might be doing some packaging, or not might, we will be doing some packaging changes to cut this list down, at least for the base runtime purposes.
So when you're doing these packaging changes and doing this investigation, where are you documenting the results that you're doing? And are there any policies or process that you guys are coming up with that the broader Fedora community should be aware of so that we don't inadvertently undo the work that you're doing?
We are still figuring this out, but we do have a project page on Taiga, Fedora InfraCloud, I believe, where you can watch our progress in the task card as we are investigating the list, the differences, what we need to do, and so on.
Right, and we're keeping all of the results of in the cards. We're also I've got a GitHub project now that I call What Packages that is maintaining the set of scripts that we're using to generate this information. So that's all being done in public.
I mean, yes, it is. It's done in public, but the worry that I have is that with it being in Taiga, it's more of a people interested go look at it versus here's what you need to know not to mess up our project, right?
Right. So that's we haven't gotten far enough in the analysis to make any recommendations yet. Absolutely, we are going to be blogging and talking constantly about how we can keep this from exploding further and how we can have people help trim it down once we figure out what those best practices are.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely, we're going to be talking about that a lot until you are tired of it.
Good. At the individual package level, you know, if you're making changes to reduce dependencies or, you know, even switch them to weak dependencies, are you doing that through Bugzilla so that it's documented as to why, or are you just, I mean, have you not got to that point yet either?
We haven't got to
we haven't made any.
Oh.
We haven't made any changes yet.
Okay.
The other packages. That the first thing that we're going to do, I think, would be to figure out what needs to be done and then take it to the packaging committee and get those up and get packaging guidelines updated before we make any kind of changes to anyone else's package.
Fantastic.
But of course, cooperating with the package maintainers is preferable than just doing changes blindly. Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, but
sorry, I misspoke when I said that. I meant encouraging changes to happen, which may or may not mean us doing it if the package maintainer is not responsive. But
no, I fully agree. The reason I asked if it was being documented is that, you know, you guys might approach a package maintainer and have asked them to do a change, and they might think, yeah, sure, that makes sense, and then nobody writes it down. 2 years go down the road, a new package maintainer comes and picks up that package and undoes it because it was never written down why it was done. So I think it's kind of twofold, right? You have the packaging guidelines, and then you have the documentation on why changes were made. So just something to keep in mind going forward.
Fortunately, in the future, we will be using the modularity all over the place, so it will be also documented in the modules. You know, there are special fields for rationales and the reasons why things were changed and why. Yeah,
it's a good answer.
Some of these things might make sense to put a comment in the spec file or have those kind of like guidelines of, you know, if you put something
in the spec file in the Git
documented in line is always good, I think.
Absolutely.
So of those, I don't know if we're at the questions portion yet, but we're asking questions anyways. Of those 6,000, how many are actually in the runtime part rather than the build everything part?
I think it was 141st. No,
355, I think.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's a more, well, that's still insane, but it is a on the magnitude of sanity, or only one order out from sanity, I think.
But
right?
that's basically just the basis of the generational core, not base runtime itself, although currently it's included in the base runtime module.
Okay, so the generational core is about 300 packages.
Yes, but it most likely will grow as people demand like new features in that, like package management, system management, and
the proof of concept that we started with was, let's hypothetically consider what it would take to build a base runtime that was simply the POSIX definition. The set of, it's a kernel plus the set of packages necessary to meet the definition of POSIX. So that's where we can get these 355 packages from, essentially. That being said, there are a number of packages in the list that we probably don't actually need in the base runtime. For example, UUCP is a nice historical novelty, but we pull that out of the list and we stop, and we can get the entirety of the Perl stack out of the self-hosting list, for example. There are a lot of small changes we can make to eliminate packages that are not strictly necessary from a low-level perspective, at least for anything more than historical reasons, and that will start getting our numbers far down.
I'm going to just refrain from making Perl jokes at this point. So.
You're failing.
I know, it's like claiming that I'm not going to say it, and then I do it.
Anyway, this brings us to the point of what the plans for the near future are, and that's basically cutting down on the dependency chains, both runtime and build time, minimizing the number of crypto libraries that we would like to include in this minimal set. That's a different topic, also ongoing, because currently we use in this small set of 6,000 RPMs, we are using all the crypto libraries available in Fedora.
Actually, we're doing that also in the actually small set of 355 packages. We are pulling in all 4 crypto libraries.
Yeah,
however,
even better.
However, we're looking at the possibility that we may actually be able to eliminate both GNU-TLS and libgcrypt from that set.
And NSS too?
It looks like NSS may be harder than we thought. It turns out that the actual implementation of the crypto is included in the NSS soft token freebull library. So we're probably not going to get rid of NSS anytime soon. But we should be. We are certainly going to be able to get GNU-TLS out of the base runtime module, and if we can manage to convince the systemd guys to get have an alternate build of systemd that uses either OpenSSL or NSS instead of libgcrypt, they're the only ones pulling that into the base runtime as well.
And they are also pulling TLS in for something else that's in there too, right? I think it uses both.
I don't think so.
Oh, well, then maybe it's changed.
No, I think they're only using GNU-TLS.
Okay, so this is one of the goals, and yeah, we basically splitting the huge prototype into different a number of different modules that will make together define the generational core stack plus its built environment. And once we have that, we would like to build this in the Factory 2 infrastructure and then build Fedora 26 server on top of that. That's another joint task for this team and the modularity team together.
And so this is targeted to actually be something for Fedora 26 in
yes, absolutely
8 months from now or less.
Yes. We're not necessarily going to be fully replacing the traditional build of Fedora server in that time frame. However, we should have a parallel version of it at that time. And Fedora 27, we intend to have completely replaced with it.
Okay. So basically, the definition of this work or the output is a module which contains these things. Is there another sort of, right now we've got like crit path packages which have their own little checkbox in the database, package database. Is it going to be something like that, or is the definition basically this module is the thing?
The point of, I think, of modularity is this module is the thing. So the idea being that they're always updated as a complete set and tested as a complete set. So you know, the reason behind the historical reasons behind crit path was just, this is a set of stuff that that has a tendency to break a whole lot of other stuff when it changes. So make sure you test it more. But if we're releasing something that has always been tested as a complete set, I think that the necessity of the crit path label goes away, or at least is reduced in its purpose.
Right, or in another way, the whole module is the crit path rather than its packages. And
well, also, Matthew, remember that modules have something called the API of the module, which is the set of the packages that are basically defining the module itself, although the module can also include dependencies for those packages. But those dependencies aren't guaranteed to be stable and not changing, not breaking, not anything. So maybe you could map this generational core API to the critical path set.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And the module, basically, when we say we build it with Factory 2.0, go ahead.
Sorry, I do want to interject one thing there. Part of the problem with the crit path definition has always been that it's always been, first of all, at the source RPM level, which means that, and of course the dependencies of the source RPM level. So everything in that critical path, it has to be treated the same way as if it's absolutely critical. One of the reasons for going to the modular approach is that we are going to be publishing the specific set of ABIs and APIs that are meant to be kept stable. So we don't necessarily have to ensure that every piece underneath that has remained identical, as long as all of the exposed and identified APIs are corrected. So it does also allow us to move things under the hood faster than we would have previously.
And then when somebody comes along and says, "Hey, wait, I was using that," we can either evaluate whether that thing should have been part of the API, or we can say, "Well, please stop."
One of the ways we're looking at doing this actually is making anything that isn't public API, that doesn't have to be public API, actually in some way hiding it from the external experience. Just locating it in somewhere other than the default linker path. So if anybody who's using that has made an active decision to be breaking the rules, and if they get broken, they get to keep the pieces.
So does that mean changing? That means probably significantly changing the packaging guidelines, or does it just mean like dumping stuff under libexec, or how would that look?
We don't know yet. What we're talking about right now is aspirational. We haven't figured out the details of it yet. So we're not, once we do, those will end up.
It all goes in a container, and then nobody has any idea how to get transparency.
And this is more like a modularity question than base runtime.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't ask us.
Well, no, you'd say that, but unfortunately for us, we're going to have to be the vanguard there. We'll have to be the ones who figure out how that works.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
So, and then just from back to kind of high level thing, when we say it's going to be built in factory and delivered as a module, that means there will be a new separate repository that all these things are going into. Is that correct?
It is, yes. Every module will be delivered as a separate RPM repository or containers. And there will be a special module level repository for the modularity tools that would enable those repositories for you. It's another level on top.
And so the Fedora server build of this module would come with some of these other repositories enabled out of the box.
Yes.
Presumably, we're talking about possibly building these RPMs in separate ways for that module, so it will not be the same build, and that can't necessarily be hard linked on the mirrors against the ones in the everything pool. Is that correct?
Actually, we plan to build those in Koji, just like any other RPM. We prevent the conflicts with the standard builds by including the module name and version and release, as they currently are named, in the dist tag instead of the Fedora release dist tag. So, for example, you would have like glibc, its version, and in this tag you would have base runtime, whatever version of base runtime.
But to answer Matthew's direct question, yes, they would effectively be different RPMs. That it would have different repo data, so they couldn't they could not just be hard linked between branches.
Okay. Do we have a plan for working this out with a mirror network, or is that a to be solved?
That's to be solved.
All right. Fair, but let's make sure we solve it.
Okay, so I don't think I have anything else. If you have any more questions, just shoot.
I guess my main question is, do we really feel like this is on track for Fedora 26? Are there risks to that? Factory 2.0 is obviously, and the modularity basic work is obviously a big dependency. Are there other things that are problematic or a risk?
The main risk is that Factory 2 wouldn't be ready in time. We are still facing some issues, and there are some unknowns in the equation. So, but that aside, we are on track.
Cool. All right, then my other question is, how can people to whom this seems interesting get involved? I think everybody in this call are all Red Hatters here, but this is not meant to be an exclusive to Red Hat party, and this is cool stuff. We would definitely want to make sure that anyone can participate. If I am interested, how do I get involved in the project?
Well, we have a wiki page on Fedora Wiki called Base Runtime, and you can find all the information there. Basically, it just means sending a mail to the devel mailing list or joining the Fedora Modularity IRC channel.
Okay.
We'll talk to you.
And are there sort of easy tasks that people can plug into easily, or is it kind of a come to the meetings and find out what needs to be done situation?
The latter.
Yeah, we don't. Once we get past the aforementioned guidelines that we want to start implementing, the set of moderately easy tasks will be implementing some of those packaging changes throughout the distribution. And one at a time, those are small. Taken in small bites, those are fairly easy tasks that someone could pick up and do. But we aren't quite there yet.
Okay.
So right now, all of the work is heavily biased towards highly experienced packagers figuring out where we can trim off a huge branch of garbage.
Okay. So, well, I guess that's probably, there may be people listening to this who actually fit into highly experienced packagers who would like to trim out branches of garbage as well. So
yes. So if they are interested, please join us. We would love to hear your input.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
Absolutely. We are only 3 guys at the moment, so any help is welcome.
Brian, there was some noise on your channel. Was that intentional? Are you trying to ask a question?
No, I'm not. Sorry, I'll mute.
No, that's all right. I think in that case, unless anyone else has any questions, I think we're ready to wrap up here. Okay. In that case, thank you very much, Peter and Steven. Let me try that right. Steven.
It's a difficult name.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing what's going on and for all the work on this. It's very cool. We will try and keep up with it all. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for
Thanks for having
hosting.
us.